bracha birchas kahanim. So let's see what it says over here. So we are at the top of Yud Ches Amud Aleph, and the Gemara tells us Umaro 3 lines above the wider line. Umaro loymar birchas kahanim achar haidah. Why was birchas kahanim after haidah? So haidah is moedim, right? And no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Moedim is haidah. After haidah is birchas kahanim. It's not into it at all. Hashem is the end of the bracha of moedim. Right? Moedim culminates. Moedim ends with Hashem and then afterwards they stick in birchas kahanim. So it's my mistake. I thought there was another bracha there. So why do they do it over there? Zok Gemara dechsiv vayisa ahar nesyadav elam vayivarchem. Vayisa ahar nesyadav elam vayivarchem vayered me'asois hachatas va'oila v'ashlam. So you see that birchas kahanim is right next to the hakravas hakarbonos. So therefore, it should be near avodah. So Frek the Gemara, it doesn't exactly place it to where we want it after Haidah. If anything, Ema Koidem Avodah. If this is the case, it should be before Ritzei. Because first there's Vayisa Ahar Yisiyadav, and then the Avodah. So this doesn't place it. I understand it places it, we want to place it close to Avodah, and Avodah and Haidah is one bracha, but why isn't this before Ritzei? So it doesn't say Vayered lasois hachatos. He went to do the chatos after Vayisa Aaron Yadav. It says Vayered me'asois hachatos. Miksiv lasois me'asois ksiv. In other words, when he finished the birchas kahanim, then he went to do the chatos. So I'm sorry. When he finished the chatos, me'asois hachatos. When he finished the chatos, then he went to do birchas kahanim. Correct the Gemara. If that's the case, the lemar achar havoida. Why do we say birchas kahanim after moedim? We should say it right after the avoida because it says me'asois hachatos. So we're not going to split up. We're not going to split up the avoida from moedim avoida and put birchas kahanim in between. Tichsiv zeveach toida. It says zeveach toida, which means after the zvicha, then there's a haidah. So you see that first comes Ritzei, which is the avodah, and then comes moedim, which is toida. So if we have two contradictory psukim, my chaz is the sam chesahai. Why are you being tzomech on the pasuk of zeveach toida that places haidah right after zvicha, and then you're pushing birchas kahanim after that? Shmoy chahai. Look at the other pasuk that says that birchas kahanim should come right after avodah. Avoida and Haidah is considered one and the same. They go together because Avoida is be'etzem Haidah. You're serving the Rebbeinu Shalom because you're moeded to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Rashi says on the second line from the top, Chada Milsahi, Af Haidah Avoida Shamakavu. When you're being moeded, you're saying moedim, that's also an Avoida. It's an extension of Avoida. And therefore, you say Ritzei, you say moedim, and then you say Birchas Kahan. So we're 4 lines down in the wide line. So we've placed birchas kahanim after moedim, and then is the last bracha of sim shalom. Why is it there? I'm not sure why the Gemara asks the kasha. We have a process of elimination, right? There's a process of elimination. We just talked about Kaihanim giving a bracha, and then after we finish birchas kahanim, or at the end of birchas kahanim, we say v'samar shemi al nesav v'nivarchem, and the Rebbeinu Shalom tells us to a bracha da kadosh baruch hu shalom. And what is the bracha of the kadosh baruch hu? The bracha of the kadosh baruch hu shalom. Shenemar Hashem yivarech es amo shalom. So that takes us through the entire order of the Shmoneh Esrei and why we say the brachas in this specific order. It's mashma from the Gemara that we already had all the brachas and they just had to put them in order. Or did this also create the brachas themselves? That's a good trial. It seems like it was all done at once because we didn't learn anywhere that first they were Masach and Brachas and then they put them in order. I hear. It's a good heart. Okay, so let's do the Gemara Weiter.
I'm not hearing that. What was the comment?
Mechi asked, did they have already all the brachas? And we're discussing how they put them in order, or as we're discussing the order, we're also discussing the inspiration for why the brachas were said in the first place. It sounds from here that we already had all the brachas, and it was just a question of what to put first, what to put second.
Well, I thought that by this time, this is like many hundreds of years. We're talking about the Amoraim. It was instituted by the Anshe Knesset Agdala, which is many hundreds of years before. So
I thought the Amoraim were describing like a conversation that happened.
I'm right. That's correct. They're just describing why the Anshe Knesset Agdala put them in this particular order.
So what Mechi wants to know is this also the reason why they made the brachas? Or is there a separate Makar that discusses the 18 brachas?
Is what the reason?
The discussion in our Gemara is why the Anshe Knesset Agdala put the Shmoneh Esrei in this order.
Right.
But the question that Mechi's asking is, who said you even have to have all those brachas? Who said there has to be a Rafa'inu and Shmoneh Esrei? Who said there has to be a Shem Shalom and Shmoneh Esrei? So was there another set of values, another set of logic, another set of rayas that you need these brachas? And then now this set of questions just deals with the order? Or is this also the inspiration for making the brachas in the first place?
The inspiration, I'm sorry. Is what the inspiration?
They're just discussing the order of the brachas. How do you even know? Maybe there's no bracha of refrain. Whoever said there's a bracha of refrain?
Been established.
You're right, but how did they know? How did they know to make a bracha of refrain?
The Anshe Knesset Agdala?
Yeah.
I don't know how they knew. I mean, they were Nevi'im. The earliest Anshe Knesset Agdala were Nevi'im.
So the Gemara could have said they made it in this order because they're Nevi'im. So that's what Mechi's just touching on. Is this also their makar to make the brachas in the first place? That was his question. I don't know the answer. Okay, so the Gemara tells us earlier, the Bryce told us earlier, first, Rabbi Gamliel said that he said it over in front of Shimon HaPakuli, and they were masking, or Shimon HaPakuli said he said it in front of Rabbi Gamliel, I think. Okay, let's look back to Yud Zayin on the base, to that story. Either let's see if we can find it. It's up here. Either Rav Shimon HaPakuli said it in front of Rabbi Gamliel, and then the Gemara said that there was 120 Zakanim even in the So correct the Gemara, V'timei Achar, the May of Hashem Zakanim, Umayhem Kamen Avim, Tiknu Tefillah ala Seder. If the Takana of Tefillah and the order of Tefillah was done through 120 Zakanim and Avim, so exactly what is Shimon HaPakuli bringing to the table? Shimon HaPakuli Mahister. What was that story that Shimon HaPakuli was inside of the brachos in front of Rabbi Gamliel? What was he doing? It was all known already. And for the Gemara, Shakram b'chazav v'sadr. I guess there was such turbulence during the Churban, it was forgotten the exact order, and therefore they had to put them back in order again. So I wonder if this logic is the logic of Shimon HaPakuli, who's discussing the order. Once they already knew the brachas, they just didn't know the order. Mikan ve'elach, after you say Shmoneh Esrei, in other words, the only brachas that are allowed to be in the Shmoneh Esrei itself, established permanently as permanent brachas, are these brachas. Anything else, also l'saper b'shvacha shel kadosh baruch hu. You're not allowed to just on your own add brachas. And Rashi specifically says, also l'saper b'kfiyas bracha. You're not allowed to add a kfiyas of additional brachas into the Shmoneh Esrei. Domar Belazar, it says in the pasuk, Mi malel gevuras Hashem. Who is able, who's royal to say gevuras Hashem? In other words, to establish new brachas. Yashmiya kol tilasai, someone who could say over all the tehillah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's not Pashup shot in the pasuk. That's how the Gemara is darshaning it. Lemi noah l'malel gvuras Hashem, who is royal to add brachas, to make brachas, to establish brachas. That's l'mishi yochel lashmiya kol tehillah. Someone who can say over all the Shvach HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as Rashi points out, there is no one who qualifies to that task. Rashi says, "L'mishi yochel ve'ein mishi yochel lasaper eskulei," and there is no person in the world that could list all of the Shvach HaKadosh Baruch Hu. L'fichach ein nira lasaper midaitoi l'masha tikvacham. So stay out of trouble. Instead of adding your own brachas, just say over the brachas that Chazal and the Nevi'im.
Yosy. So these added tefillahs that you see in the art scroll or whatever, so that's not considered a bracha, I guess. It's just a tefillah within the existing
It's not
bracha,
permanently
or-
added. You're allowed to add your own inserts, but you can't establish a permanent bracha in the tefillah. So Amar Belazar, the Sidmi, Hashem Shmir, let me know the Malach verse Hashem, Mishiach Shmir, Omar Rabba Bar Chana, Omar Rabbi Yochanan. Hamasaper b'shvachei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yosy Midai. If someone's too much discussing the Shvach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Neker min ha'adam, he's going to end up being uprooted from the world. Shenemar hayisuper loy ki adaber im omar ish ki bala. So let's look at the pasuk inside, and we're darshaning it to say. Let's see the pasuk inside over here. It's always easier if I see it inside. Hayisuper loy ki adaber im omar ish ki yivula. So can you talk about the Shvach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? A person can't do that, and if he does, ki yivula, he will be swallowed up. Let me just find the Morrigan. Okay, here we are. Darish Rabbi Yehuda ish kfar gevorya, lo amri lo ish kfar gibor chaya. Ma'idich siv, it says in the pasuk, l'cha dumiya sehila. The best is to stay quiet. Samu dechula mishtuka. The best medicine is silence. The Aser Avdimi Amar, when Avdimi came, he said, Ami b'marava, you say b'marava, mila b'sela. If you make a speech, we'll pay you a sela for that speech. Mishtoike, if you don't make a speech, betraying, we'll pay you double. We'll pay you double. So you see that the best drasha is shtika.
The Kimpnist and Nishredden, right?
I get the drusha. Aber to Nishredden, kommt es nicht. That's the thing. So I get the drusha geding. Aber to Nishredden, kommt es nicht. Sagt more about Kar Alpeh. If you read it by heart, how do you know? Amarava Ashi Schira Schira. Ksifasa, Ksifaka in the Megillah, by Yom Hayla Nizkarim. Ksifasa by Mechia Samalik, Kesaiv Zois, Zikarin Besefer. Malalam Besefer, because it says the farish in the pasuk, Zikarin Besefer. Afghan, so too there's a Schira that's required by Mikra Megillah is reading it in a Sefer. Who said when it says Zechira means read it? It has to be in a sefer. But who says you have to read it? Who said you have to articulate it? Dilma iyun ba'alma. Maybe you have to read it in a sefer. And that would be the Zechira. So from Eloy Salkadaita, the Tanya we learned, Zachar, it says Zachar. Yochal b'leit, you might think that Zechira is b'leit. Kishoyim Eloy Sishkach, referring to Mechias HaMolek, Harei Shikchas Alayv Amma. We're already talking about Eloy Sishkach means you can't forget it, means you got to think about it. So we already know that there's a Zechira required delayed, but you have to remember what occurred. So what is this Zechira telling you extra? So that's how we know that Zechira means you have to actually articulate it with words. If you read it in a different language, you're not Yosy Simon Megilla. Let's try to figure out what's happening. Ilema the Ksiva Mikra, it's written properly in Megillah. It's written in Lashon HaKodesh. The Karila Targum, but you're reading its translation, well, then you're not reading it. Hainu Alpeh. So then you have the problem that it's Alpeh. So why do I need a Mishnah to tell me that if you read a Targum Lo Yotza, by definition, reading a Targum is Alpeh, and we already know that Alpeh is Lo Yotza. The Ksiva Targum. We're talking about a Megillah that was written in a different language. The Ksiva Targum, the Karila Targum. And that Mishnah is telling us, Lo Yotza, unless it was written in your language. You're allowed to read it for people who read different languages in their language. The Mishnah a moment ago said otherwise. The Mishnah says if you read it in any other language, you're not Yotze. Rav and Shmuel both said halacha balaz Yavani. When it says aval karin oisel lilo yazos balaz, it doesn't mean any language. It means it's you're allowed to learn the Megillah in any language if the language that you like is Yavani. In other words, only Yavani is the last language that's allowed. It comes in every color as long as you only like yellow, right? It's hechidami. So what is the case over here? If what the Mishnah means is that it was written in Lashon Kodesh and you're just reading it as Greek, hainu alpeh. Once again, that's the same problem as alpeh. Must be speaking about a Megillah that's written in Greek, and therefore you're allowed to read it in Greek. How do you know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu referred to Yaakov Avinu as Kale? Shenemar vayikra lo Kale elokei olam. Sorry? Oh, Kale elokei Yisrael. I'm sorry. So the question is, who is talking over here? Who is vayikra lo? The Solka Daitach lemizbeach kara lo Yaakov Kale. If vayikra lo is referring to Yaakov, and Yaakov referring to the mizbeach said Kale, and the Likutei Rashi says about it doesn't mean that he made the Mizbeach into a got, into a Avodah Zarah. It means he named the Mizbeach after the incident where the Rebbeinu Shalom helped him. So he named the Mizbeach Kale, not because it was a Kale, but to represent that by the Mizbeach there was a nest that the Rebbeinu Shalom did for him. Well, then it shouldn't say Vayikra lo Kale elokei Yisrael. It should say Vayikra lo Yaakov Kale elokei Yisrael. And it doesn't say that Yaakov called it. Ela Vayikra lo li Yaakov Kale. Somebody called Yaakov Kale. Who would call Yaakov Kel? Umi Kara Kel, Elokei Yisrael. So Vayikra Kel, who called him Kel? Elokei Yisrael. Zok Gemara, Meisei, Kara Giftis. What if you read the Megillah in the language of Giftis, or Ivris, or Ilmis, or Modis, or Yavanis, or Lo Yotza? All of these languages, you're not Yotza. Fact Gemara, Haloi Damya Elalaha. We can't, this Mishnah, Taka will not stem, but we're going to focus on a different Mishnah. It says, Giftis legiftim, Ivris leivrim, Ilmis leilmim, Yavanis leivamim yotza. So that stems very good with our Mishnah, as long as you could read it in any language, as long as you read it in a language that you understand. But Freit Gemara, this is a very beautiful chart in our Mishnah, but it doesn't stem with what Rav and Shmuel said. Because Rav and Shmuel said the only foreign language you're allowed to use is Yavanis. And this brisa seems to indicate any language, as long as you understand it, you'll be Yotze. Yachi Rav and Shmuel, amai mukmi olamasnisin belaz Yavanis. Why did Rav and Shmuel say that the only foreign language that you could read the Megillah in is Laz Yavanis? Lukma b'cholaz. If you want to follow this last brisa, any foreign language you could learn the Megillah in as long as you understand it. Elamasnisin gebraisa. You have to say that our Mishnah holds like the Brisa. In fact, that any language that you read the Megillah in, if you understand it, you're going to be Yotze, which is how we originally learned the Mishnah to begin with. The Rav and Shmuel, Rav and Shmuel's halacha, that it's the only foreign language you're allowed to learn the Megillah in is in Yavanis. That's not in the Mishnah. It actually doesn't explain the Mishnah, because the Mishnah holds that's not true. The Mishnah holds that any language is good. They said their own halacha. Rav Shmuel Domer Tavayu, Laz Yavani, L'choil Kosher. So they do agree with the Mishnah. I apologize. They do agree with the Mishnah that any language that you say it in, you Yotze as long as you understand it. But Laz Yavani, everybody could say it in Greek, even if they don't understand it. But doesn't the Brisa not say that you could only read it in Greek for Greek people? Yavanis liavanim, in liavanim in l'chul amaloi. You wouldn't be able to read it for everybody that way. So how can you say Rav and Shmuel is going to go negative? So tomorrow, because inu the Amar Rab Shimon Gamliel, they're going to hold like Rab Shimon ben Gamliel that Nani Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Omer av svarim lo yitiru sheyichtavu el Yavanis, which was the other sheet in our Mishnah, who held that Yavanis is the only foreign language allowed, and that's what they were saying. So therefore, what they're saying is everybody could read it in any foreign language, provided they understand that foreign language. But Rab Shimon Gamliel holds not all foreign languages are allowed, only Yavanis. So why do they have to say their own halacha? The lemer halacha Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. All they have to do is say that Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, the Mishnah says all svarim have to be written either in Ashurus or Yavanis. The halacha is like him. Why did they have to make up their own halacha? So to make Yami halacha Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, if they would have just said halacha Reb Shimon ben Gamliel was talking about primarily all svarim. So Havamina Hanamili Shar Svarim. I would have thought that all the svarim of Tanakh, in fact, could be written in Laz. But Ava Megillah, maybe Megillah is more chamer. Maybe the Megillah, even Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, would agree that it cannot be written in Laz. Kamash Malan, that even a Megillah can be written in Laz. In Laz Yavanis, that is, Morning Shmuel. Okay, Gavalti. So this takes us to the end of the sugya. Now we're going to go back here. No matter what language you speak, if you hear it in Hebrew, you're going to be Yotze. But the Halayada, my Kamri, he doesn't know what's going on. So how is he getting kind of mitzvah if he doesn't know what's going on? Zok to Gemara, I don't understand. Midi the Hava Anoshim V'Amayoretz. Women in Amayoretz, I don't mean women who live in B'Shabbat. Women in Amayoretz, they don't understand what's going on, and you see they're Yotze. So someone who doesn't understand will be Yotze like that. Maskal Flor Ravina. Ravina asked the kasha, what type of kasha were you asking in the first place? We nowadays don't know what these words mean. We don't know exactly what these words mean. They're Aramaic words. So anyway, we don't know the meaning of the whole Megillah. Learning the Megillah creates a Peshuminisa because people say, I want to hear more about it. I don't understand it. What does it mean? It creates a buzz. And that's how it works. So Hakanami, if you don't understand Ashuris, you're allowed to hear the Megillah Ashuris because mitzvahs Priya Peshuminisa, it's a mitzvahs Priya Peshuminisa, you might not understand, but you can ask around. I'm sorry? In any law, should even understand. I hear, but that's because we had tzukim to say that we had tzukim to bring why I have to only give Moshe. The question here is, let me ask you a question. If you miss one word in the Megillah, are you Yosef? What if you miss one word? Not Yosef. The Gemara brings a raya from here. The friend brings a raya from here. You miss one word, you're not Yosef. Because the Gemara asks, so the Gemara can answer, if you don't understand the whole Megillah, you're not Yotze. But for 3 words, so the Megillah, you don't understand 3 words. So if you arrive from here, that even 3 words, if you miss, you're not going to be Yotze, which is what we hold, right? If you miss a little bit, you got to go back to where you left off. Zok Gemara Vayter, Kara Shirug and Yotze. You read the Megillah in bits and pieces. You read a couple of psukim, you took a break, you read another couple of psukim. The Rabbanan didn't know what my Sirugin is, and the Mefarshim say Avad they knew what Sirugin is. They didn't know how much time. Is it even a tiny little break in between your bouts of reading, or does it have to be a very long break? They weren't sure. We had this Gemara, I believe, in Rosh Hashanah. So Shavua la'amsa de Rebbe. We were talking yesterday about women who could be big Talmidei Chachamim. We had the Nevi'is. So they heard that the maid in the house of Rebbe. They told the Rabbanan, the way the Rabbanan would come into Rebbe's house, they would come in groups of 2, 3, they would come in slowly, and then there'd be a break, another 2. They didn't all come in at one time. So for a half hour, the door was opening and slamming, instead of them all coming in at once. So she told them, the Carmel Rabbanan, to have an eili pisky, they were coming in a little bit at a time, to Rebbe's house, why are you coming in bits and pieces? Come all together at once. And there was a very small separation in between each group. And she still called it Sirugin, so you see that even a small hefsek is a problem of Sirugin. My chalagloigas. Chalagloigas is some type of vegetable that's mentioned in the Mishnah, and the Rabbanan didn't know exactly what it was. So once again, Shamul Amsa de Rebbe, the Amr Lahu Gavra, the Avakamivdir Parfachini, he was cutting up, he was working with parfachini, which is a type of vegetable. So we knew what it was. Now I don't know what parfachini is. I'm hoping somebody has an English art scroll And I'm hoping once you tell us the English word, then we may know what it is. He was scattering purslane. Purslane. Okay, so purslane is some type of vegetable. I don't know what it is, but it's some type of vegetable. Okay. Well, have a yadi rabbanon. The rabbanon didn't know my salsala usura mecca. And the pasuk is dig in and get involved, get deeply involved in the Torah, and it'll raise you up. But they didn't know what the word salsala means. Shamua la'amsa de Rebbe. They heard the maid of Rebbe's household. She was a linguist. She knew all these words. There was a guy playing with his chup. She told him, how long are you going to be playing with your hair? So that taught us that salsala, you play with it, you krazel it and twist it and turn it. So the Torah will raise you up if you're very involved in playing. What the pasuk means is Hashlech al Hashem Yehavcha. Throw your Yehavcha al Hashem, v'yichal kalecha, and He will take care of you. What is the Yehavcha? Amar Rabba Babachana, Zim Nechat Nahav Azilna Ba'adahu Taya. So we're no longer being a raya from Rebbe's housemaid. Now we're being a raya from an Arab merchant. The Chadarina Tuna, and I was carrying a package. Well, Amar Li, he told me, Shkol Yehavach, take your Yehavach, the Shadi Agamloi, and put it on my camel. So from there, I realized that Yehavach means your load. So take your load and put it on Hashem. We should all be zoicha to take our loads and put it on Hashem, and then Hashem should take care of us, and we should just glide, smooth sailing. Any load we have, the Rebbeinu Shalom should take care of the load, and it should get there wherever it has to go, smooth sailing. The Rebbeinu didn't know how they're going to get the load over. Hashlach al Hashem Yehavach. He's talking about when Hashem is going to sweep out the goyim from Eretz Yisrael. Going to totally destroy. But we didn't know what it meant exactly. Once again, we're going back to the household of Rebbe. She told her friend, "Oh, you want to help me? Shkoil tatisa. Take a broom, the tati besa, and sweep the house." If you want to help, that's the you do to help. So we learned that the metata means I will sweep him out with a broom. Taner above. Beautiful. Taner above. Shmuel said, could be that's where the word tati comes from. Taner above. Kara sirugin yatsa. If you read the Megillah, sirugin yatsa, which is not like what Amish says. Amish says lo yatsa, but this guy says yatsa. We'll turn over now onto Amud Beis. Sirusin, but if you read it Sirusin, then lo yatsa. Rashi says Sirusin means, I'm sorry? Our Mishnah says yatsa? Oh, so maybe I forgot our Mishnah. It says Kara, let me see where it says it. Kara Sirugin Misnamim Yatsa. I was wrong. I'm sorry. You're right. It is like a Mishnah. Thank you, Mechi. So Sirugin is Yatsa. So, but Kara Sirusin, which Rashi says is backwards, is Mafreya lo Yatsa. So this exactly stimulates my Mishnah. Thank you. Rav Muna Omer Mishum Rabbi Yehuda. Af b'Sirugin, even if you lend it b'Sirugin, im shok de ligmor eskula. If you spend so much time quiet in between your reading of the Megillah, then chayzol l'roish, then you have to start over again. Which is not arguing with our Mishnah, it's adding clarification to the Mishnah. Sirugin is leaving a little bit, but enough to finish the whole Megillah, that's too much. Which is l'chomer, right? Is a chomer that if you waited too long, you have to say it over again. What does it mean kedei ligmar skula? Let's say you're in the middle of the Megillah. Okay, you have to achar right? You're at the third pair, right? So what does it mean kedei ligmar skula? Does that mean mehecha the koila seifa? You waited enough time that from where you were holding, you'd be able to finish the Megillah in the time that you were quiet. Or maybe it's a fixed amount of time, the amount of time it takes to learn the entire Megillah. 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It has to mean the amount of time. The only way we would say you have to start over again is if you waited the amount of time to finish the whole Megillah. You know why? Because if it's just from where you're holding to the end, then so then there's no shear, because depending on where you are, that's how long it is. So everyone's going to nudnik the row. I was up to here. Do I have to say it over? Right? By making a fixed shear from beginning to end, then everything's crystal clear. Amar Abba, Amar Yirmiyah, Bar Abba, Amar Rav. Halacha Krav Muna again, l'chumra, that if you waited to the ligmar.
Not really, because it depends who's leaning.
Yeah, but then the Rav could have a standardized time, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and they'll ask you, is it 30 minutes or not? But it's inevitable. Something I don't remember. I'm not sure if it was like 19 and a half or if it was 20 and 5 seconds.
No, some can take a half hour, some can take an hour.
No, but if it was the ratio of Seifa, then there would be a minute. The Rabbanim would make an assessment based on what an average Wakar is, and they would say, let's say it's 25 minutes. And then they wouldn't just say, how long does your Wakar take? They'll just give them a minute amount. They give it to them a minute. That's right. It's a specific amount of time. You don't say every person's different. We have it in minutes. So Rabbi said, Allah that if you waited Kalikbar Skula, you're not yet. Shmuel Omer and Allah Karbuna. Shmuel was Michael. I said, even if you waited Kalikbar Skula, it's Siruban and you're still yet. The Surah Masna Hachi. In Surah, this is how they said it, that Shmuel was Michael and the Rav was Masna. The Pumbedisa Masna Hacha, the Pumbedisa they quoted differently. Amar Avkana Marav Allah Karbuna, or Shmuel Omer and Allah Karbuna. Isn't that the same thing? Which is before also we said that Rav holds halacha krav muna. Shmuel Amar ein halacha krav muna. Rav Bibi Masni Ipcha. Rav Amar ein halacha krav muna. Shmuel Amar halacha krav muna. Rav Bibi has the opposite. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said, "Nekayt the Rav Bibi biyat." Hold on to Rav Bibi's version, where Rav said ein halacha krav muna and Shmuel said halacha krav muna. Why? Because it's normally Shmuel would have been machmer. Why would Shmuel have been machmer? Is because the Shmuel the chayish lechida. Rav Muna is a shittas yachid. It's a chumrah by a yachid. Normally Rav doesn't concern himself with a yachid. Shmuel is the one who will pass on the chumrah even with a yachid. Etnan shemeres yabim shekidish achid v'sachos. You have two brothers that fell to yibum to a woman. So let's say you have Rachel and Leah are sisters, and Rachel was married to Reuben, and Reuben died, and he left over two brothers, Shimon and Levi. So Shimon and Levi both have somewhat of a responsibility to do Yibam on Rachel. The problem is that Shimon went ahead and made kedushin on Leah. So now Leah is his mikudeshes, it's his wife, and the Zika, the responsibility that he has to do Yibam on Rachel, is now not going to work because he can't do Yibam on the sister of his wife. But it's not his wife yet. He made Kedushin, he didn't make Nisuin. So Hashem learned that once he makes Kedushin, he's done, he's out of the picture. He cannot make Yibam, and his brother will make Yibam. But let's see what the Braisa says. The Yochid, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira said, what we do is we tell Shimon, don't make Nesuin. Stop there. Until your other brother makes Yibum. Once your other brother makes Yibum, then you're in Gansen, Potter from Yibum, there's no Zika at all. And then when you make the Nesuin, it's on a completely free woman. Because if you make Nesuin now, you're making Nesuin on the sister of someone who is Zakuk to you. So you better be Machmer, don't make the Nesuin, wait till your brother makes Yibum, and now you're completely cut off from your sister-in-law, and therefore you could now marry her sister. So that's the Chumrah of Rabbi Yehuda. The Zika creates an Isser for me to be Makadosh, the sister of the Yavama, which is a Chumrah. Because Ba'atim, that's not how it works. It's only a Chumrah. And Amar Shmuel halacha Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, and Shmuel said halacha like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira l'chumrah, but Rav normally doesn't pass on the Chumrah, and we should pass on like Rav l'kula. And therefore, even if you waited a very long time, you shouldn't have to blame the Megillah again. We know that normally the halacha is like Rav by Yisurim, and like Shmuel and Hilchos Dinamominis, and I believe we pass on like Rav. And Toysus, because of that, says a chiddush. And Tosfos says, so let's look at the second line of the top Tosfos. V'chein halacha, we paskin l'kula not like Rav Huna. Dein tzarech lachzor l'roish, even if you waited enough time to finish on Megillah. The halacha k'Rav B'Surei. We paskin like Rav B'Surei, the Amar Kain, and Rav paskin not like Rav Huna, right? Zok Tosfos all the way at the end, third to the bottom line. Umikan soymich ri, and because of this psak, that even if it's shok kedei ligmor es kula, it's not a hefsek. It's kisha'aymed v'emes v'yatzev. You finished Krishma, but the tzibur is ahead of you. They're already in middle of Shmoneh Esrei, and they're almost finished Shmoneh Esrei, and the Chaz is about to start. And if you start now finishing up the Birchas Krishma and you say Shmoneh Esrei, you're going to miss Kedusha, you're going to miss Kaddish. So you want to wait and not say your Shmoneh Esrei until their davening is over, and then say Shmoneh Esrei, especially if you're in a rush. Okay, so he says, you wait, which means you're waiting until the end of davening, and then you'll proceed with your Shmoneh Esrei. But that means you're waiting enough time to say the whole tefillah. How could you do that? Since we pass like Rab, who holds that even if a child, a ligmar skula, you're yoytze, therefore you're allowed to do it. Okay, Zok Tehillah Gemara Vayter. Zok Tehillah Gemara Vayter. We are up to Tanarban. Hishmit bas sofer oisios. What if the sofer missed a couple of oisios, or psukim, or a couple of psukim, but the karan akari, but the person who read the Megillah filled it in. Kimetorgamin hamatag. The way Rashi learns, it means that you filled it in, just like the Metorgamin says information on his own, without something that's written mefurish, you said it on your own. That's how Rashi learns. But the Gra says that's the case, then it didn't need to say Kimetorgamin hamatagim. It could have just said the Karna. You filled it in. So the Gra actually learns a little bit differently. Let me see if I can find it here on the side. It's on this side. Yeah, here it is. Near the Lefirish Rashi calls us Svasiyas. The Meturgan of Matargim is extra. Aval Pirishu, the Gra wants to learn that what it means is Shakaran Beloshin Targum. You actually didn't read it in Hebrew. You filled in those words Beloshin Targum. Levisha Yerugilan Betargum Balpeh. Because it was normal to say Targum Balpeh because it wasn't written, and it says you're Yoitza. So the Kamash Malan, the Chiddush is the Af Lamaker Ashuris Yoitza Belas. Even if it's someone who understands Ashuris, he'll be Yoitza if a couple of words are filled in Laz. The Kamash Malan, Sha'af Shakar Bebeis L'Sharnis, even though you split up the Megillah into two different languages because you're saying these words in a different language, Yotza. The Tzarech Likra Skula, you have to learn the whole Megillah of Af Hamit Ma'akiv, and even missing a drop is Ma'akiv. So Rashi says you filled it in Hebrew, and the Gra says it means you filled it in even in a different language, you'll be Yotze. So the Gra learns a bigger Chiddush L'Kula from this Gemara. I was missing words, and you filled in the words. So Rashi says you filled it in Lashon Kodesh, and the Gra says you filled it in a different language. So Frekra Meisvei. If they were like rubbed out letters, or torn out, if there's still a little impression of them, share obi kosher from la psula. So you see here, if some letters are missing, you can't just fill it in, because if you can fill it in verbally, why is it possible? So these last brashas that we quoted, that oisios mustushtoshos would cause a problem. That's if the entire sefer was written that way. But if just a couple of letters are missing and you filled it in, that wouldn't be a problem. Taner Rabbanan. Hishmit ba hakoyrei pasuk echad. If the koyrei skipped one pasuk, lo yomer, he shouldn't say, let's finish off, and when we're done, we'll go back to make up that pasuk. Lo yomer ekros kulav achach ekra oisei pasuk, ala koyrei me oisei pasuk ve'elach. You have to go back to the pasuk that you missed, and you have to read from there. And nichnas leveis hakneses u'mata tzibur shekarei chetzia. What if you come late to Megillah? Lo yomer ekra chetzia matzibur. Let me just listen to the rest of the laning, and then after they're finished, the achach ekra chetzia, then I'll make up the half that I missed. Because it has to be in order. You have to quickly start from the beginning and catch up to where the Walkir is up to, and then you can continue listening. Misnamnem Yotze. What is the definition of misnamnem? If you go to a red light, you will see what the definition of misnamnem is. Amar Bashi, nim veloy nim, you're up but you're not up, tir veloy tir. I'm saying near, you're sleeping but you're not quite sleeping. Tir veloy tir, you're up but you're not quite up. The kari levani, if someone calls you, Yankel, you say, yeah. But veloy yodalai do is sure. You ask this fellow a question, he won't be able to answer you. But the chimat kurulay mitkar. If you ask him, where's the coffee? I don't know. Is the coffee in the fridge? Yeah. So he's awake enough that if you give him clear information, he can agree to it, but he's not awake enough to offer up good information. He was writing it, darshaning it, or fixing it in Kivin Leviyasa. In fact, let's think about it. You're writing it. So, either come as Hadar Psuka because of that. He's writing it. So as he's writing it, he says the word that he's about to write. Vayihi. He writes Vayihi. Because he's writing it from his memory. So even if he had kavanah to be yotze, how would it work? Have alpeh. Because he said the word before he wrote it, and then he wrote it. Ella, what are you going to say? The cause of psuka v'karila. He wrote a pasuk and then he read it. He wrote another pasuk and he read it. That's better place for it. You wouldn't be yotze. Because as you're reading the first pasuk, you don't have the whole Megillah written. You only have the first pasuk written. Kula, the halacha is like the Mandarbu says kula, meaning you have to learn the entire Megillah. Because there's a machlokes as to what consists of the Megillah, which part of the Megillah you have to say. And if you even hold like the Mandarbu holds, you don't have to read the whole Megillah. You only have to start from Mish Yehudi. Everybody agrees ksuva kula. The whole Megillah has to be written. So if you're writing the Megillah as you're saying it, you clearly cannot be yotze. Ella, what you have to say is the Moncha Megillah Kamei. He's sure he's writing a Megillah, but he has a tikkun, he has a sample Megillah right near him. The Karim Lamina Psuka, and he's reading pasuk by pasuk from the sample Megillah, and then he's transcribing it into the new Megillah that he's writing. Come on, let me Messiah the Rabbi Barbachana. Also lichtiv ois akash shalom minaksav. You see that when someone writes a Megillah, he has to have a real Megillah near him because he's not allowed to write it Balpeh. He has to be copying it over from another Megillah. You don't have a Raya, that's how it has to be. In this case, that the Mishnah is discussing, that's what it was. But you don't have a Raya that you always have to write a Megillah that way. The discussion in our Mishnah is where there's another Megillah there. But who said every time you write a Megillah, you need to have one with you? You're not allowed to write even one word balpeh when you're writing a sefer. Everything has to be copied over from another text. Reb Meir went to be ma'aber Shana and Asya. Asya is not in Eretz Yisrael. Asya is in Bavel. And somebody asked me this week, how is it possible that you could be ma'aber Shana? How could you talk about Kiddush HaChodesh? You need Eidim and Sanhedrin and Bezdin in the Makam HaMikdash, in the Makam HaSanhedrin. So how is it possible that they were able to do it? But Allah is, the Rambam says beferish, that when there's no Chachma Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael, the greatest Chachamim are out of Eretz Yisrael, then you could be Mekash the Chodesh out of Eretz Yisrael. And when the greatest Chachamim are in Eretz Yisrael, then it has to be done in Eretz Yisrael. Anyway, in this Asya, there was no Megillah there. And you know what he did? The Kasam Eliboy. He wrote, he knew the whole Megillah, Milah by Harker Meir, and he wrote the whole Megillah. And then the Kara, and he laid it. So the problem is, we just said from Rabbi Barbachana that you're not allowed to write any sefer about that. Reb Meir, the Mekayim Bei Vachapecha Yishu Nagdecha. Reb Meir was kuloi Torah. He had it inside him program. Vachapecha in his eyebrows. Yishu Nagdecha will make your eyes look straight. In other words, he was focused on Torah. He knew it clearly. Amli Rabbi Bachamal Rabbi Yirmiyah Midifti. My Vachapecha Yishu Nagdecha. Amrloi Elu Divrei Torah. It's referring to the Divrei Torah that guide you straight. Torah, if you look away for a second, boom, you're going to forget it. Because Torah you have to focus on the whole time. Reb Meir didn't have a text. He had to look away from the text. Even though normally if you look away from Torah, you forget it. Not so Reb Meir. Reb Meir had a clear. He was special. He was able to write it by heart. Reb Chisda found Reb Chananel was writing Svarim, not copying it over from another text. Amalei, Ru'uya Kala Torah Kula Lichasav Alpicha. You're such a Gavalta guy, Rab Chananel. You know Torah so well. Really, you could write the whole Torah by heart. No problem. The problem is the halacha is against you. And the Chachamim also so Rab Chizda corrected Rab Chananel. Mitakamer Kala Torah Kula Ru'uya Lichasav Alpicha. Michlal the Miyusharin Netzloi. Why, if Rab Chizda is saying about Rab Chananel that you could have written the whole Torah, it must be that Rab Chananel knew Kol Torah Kula backwards and forwards. Correct to the Gemara, V'har Meir. Also, Rab Chizda said you're not allowed to write even Isachas. Rab Meir did write the whole thing. So Gemara Shasat Chak Shani. In Rab Meir's case, they didn't have anything to copy from. He was stuck. So this is the best that they can do. But by Rab Chananel, he could have brought. I'm sorry. Yeah, he copies over from him. Yeah. Zok the Gemara, Shasat Chak Shani. Abaye Shora, the Devei Bar Chavu, L'michtav Tefillin Mezuzah Shalom Netzah. He allowed the Devei Bar Chavu to write Tefillin Mezuzahs without copying it over. Keman Ki Ai Tana, it's going to be according to the next Tana that we're going to quote. The Tanya of Yirmi Aimim Shemabenu, Tefillin Mezuzahs Nichtave Shalom Netzah. They can be written Shalom Netzah, and we're going to soon see why. Vein Tzricha Sirtut, and they don't need Sirtut. The Hilchasa, which Rashi tells us means halacha l'moshe misinai. Halacha l'moshe misinai is tefillin and tzrich and sirtut. You don't have to make the lines in tefillin, but mezuzahs tzrich and sirtut. You have to make the lines for mezuzahs. And idi v'idi nechtav shalom netzab. You know why? My time on migras krisim. The parshas of tefillin and the parshas of Shema, people are very shori in them. They know it well, and therefore they can write it even alpha. Okay, let's stop here.
Go ahead.